We have the graph of a function here called f of x, and it runs like this. It goes to the point 2, comma 2, and goes to the point 6, comma 4. Now, I'd like to make a guess for what the y value is when x gets closer and closer to 4. In fact, when x becomes 4, what would we guess? Right? So in other words, what is the guess of y as x gets close to 4? In fact, what would we really guess if x were equal to 4? Well, we should be guessing that y would be 3. And so the way that we write this is the limit of this function f of x as x approaches 4 is equal to 3. Now, what is the actual value of y? For that, we're going to need to look under this ribbon. Actual value of y. And the notation for that will be f of 4. So be real careful here. Notice there's an x right there, and there's a 4 here. That distinction is important. So let's take a look, and we see that when x equals 4, the y value is 3. These numbers happen to both be equal for this function. Now let's take a look at another function. We have a function here that's now called g of x. Goes to this point 2, 2, goes to this point 6, 4. So what would be the guess of the y value as x gets closer and closer to 4? Or rather, as x gets closer and closer to 4, in fact, when x is equal to 4, what would be our guess based on the best available data we have? So without looking under this ribbon, we would guess that y would still be 3. So the way we write this is that the limit of the function g of x as x approaches 4 is equal to 3. You can read this as my guess of the y value for this function g when x is 4 would be 3. Now let's take a look at the actual y value. There's a hole there. The actual y value happens to be 1 for this function. So let's write that in here, that g of 4 is equal to 1. So you'll notice that the two numbers we have here and here are now different. Let's take a look at another function, a third function. We have a function here called h of x. Goes through, here's the graph again, goes through the point 2, 2, goes to the point 6, 4, like we've seen before. And to talk about the guess of the y value when x is 4, we will write it this way. The limit of this function h of x, the limit of h of x, as x approaches 4 is equal to 3. Now let's take a look at the actual y value. What's the actual y value when x is equal to 4? There's a hole, like in the previous example, but then there's no solid point anywhere else. So actually, h of 4 here is undefined. H of 4 does not exist. In other words, we don't get a number this time.